Anyway, I guess I should tell you who I am for those that don't know me. I think everybody in here probably does. I'm Shannon Poe, and I'm with the American Mining Rights Association. We've got a couple of other speakers today. One is John Cameron, who we'll introduce and bring up in just a second, with Pacific Legal Foundation, which involves Mr. Reinhardt, who made it this morning. Did I wake you up this morning, by the way? Yes! It was funny, Brandon is desperately sending me emails at 10:30 last night. Well, I was already in bed. So when I woke up at 3:30, I look and here's Brandon, dude, is there an extra seat? You need to let me know right away. And I thought, okay. Good morning. So we also have Craig Lindsay, who is the president of Western Mining Alliance. Probably our closest partners that we have with AMRA in the mining industry, as well as Robert Guardiola, who's the president of Delta Gold Diggers and also a very close personal friend of mine. So the meeting itself, I do want to give a little accolades to the GPAA, is they are co-hosting this, and they're helping us to actually pay for the facility and some of the food. And you take, where's Chris Georgie? I know he's going to eat half the damn sandwiches, so, you know, no, I'm just kidding. I'm glad you made it, Chris. So anyway, I'm going to just kind of give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today, and then I'd like to bring Mr. Cameron up with the Pacific Legal Foundation. So basically, there's three different things that we're really going to cover, with the exception of John. And I'm going to give you the big picture, and I know most of you guys in here, well, maybe half of you at least, have probably heard me speak before, where I focus predominantly on mining rights. And as I was writing this presentation over the last couple of months, it really kind of dawned on me, I need to give you the big picture. And so today, you're going to get a little bit bigger picture so you can understand. And there's even been some developments just this week since I was in Brea that I'm going to bring out and talk about as well. So anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. And we're really going to focus on unity and getting everybody on the same page and give you guys solutions of what we can do to make a difference. Because let me just, by a show of hands here, how many of you think that the country's going in the right direction? Anybody? Anybody? So, and then Craig is going to talk about a couple of cases in particular. One is going to be Brandon's, and then the CEQA case, and really about the litigation. And what we want you guys to understand today as well is to get engaged in this. If you've got questions, we encourage you to ask those. We're also going to, at the end here, have a kind of a Q&A session, which is really more or less a forum where you can ask any question that you want, within reason, of course. But and then Robert Guardiola is going to bring up the third segment, which is really focused on mining districts as well as what the clubs can do to make an impact as well. So that's the format for today. I don't know what you've got planned for lunch. Pizza. Alrighty then. So anyway, I'd like to introduce John Cameron with Pacific Legal Foundation. So one thing I want before we clap here is I researched, I'm just going to say we just met this morning, he doesn't know anything about me. I researched Pacific Legal Foundation extensively. And I think that the 9 cases that they've taken to the United States Supreme Court, I think they won every single frickin' one of them. Every one. So.
So I'll just hand them down that way. Normally I don't speak with one of these because for a little guy I'm pretty noisy, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to try to bribe you to fill out the little form that we're handing out. Unlike the government, I'm not going to hold a gun to your head and say fill it out. I'm going to do the right thing and try to buy your contact information with a giveaway in a little bit. I'm going to give away a couple of books. Michael Crichton's State of Fear, which is a nice little eco-terror book. And then one of our brilliant lawyers, Timothy Standifer, wrote a book, property rights in the 21st century, because without property rights you have no other rights. So we're just going to do a drawing to bribe you to fill the card out, but don't do that now. So tell you a little bit about me. I used to jump out of airplanes and carry a machine gun for a living, so I've always tried to serve in one way or another. When I worked in publishing, I was very proud of the fact that a lot of people who advertised with my organization started with nothing, a truck that wouldn't start, and then turned it into a fleet of trucks. And then when I used to do training in leadership, management, project management, and sales, I created people who learn how to manage. How many of you know great managers in your org? That's the same number of hands as we lifted before, right? So there's a thread running through what I do, and it's trying to make things better. And then when I talked my way into this opportunity, I call myself a freedom fighter. I raise money for Pacific Legal Foundation. My job title is development officer, and the reason it says that, if we put fundraiser on our cards, everybody'd leave the room. So I'm not a lawyer, I'm a fundraiser. And if I don't, people like me raise money, and folks like you don't give money. Pacific Legal Foundation doesn't get any money from anybody other than donors. We would not take money from the government, even if they were stupid enough to give it to us, because we sue them all the time. That's what we do for a living. We protect rights. We take on precedent-setting cases at the highest courts of the land, so that we can protect those few rights that we have left and take back the rights that the government and government agencies have stolen and do steal from us on a daily basis. That's what we do. So, a little bit about me. Pacific Legal Foundation, 1973, 74, depending on which page you look at on the website. Ronald Reagan, bless him. Where is he when we need him? His inner circle started Pacific Legal Foundation, the seed money, because they noticed that a bunch of other nonprofit organizations were out there supporting the government, getting grants from the government to work supporting government overreach and violation of our liberties and the Constitution, but there's nobody defending us. And I'll say us. So that's what Pacific Legal Foundation was started by. And some of the core cases in this country in property rights that allow us to challenge this government overreach were brought to circuit courts and Supreme Courts by Pacific Legal Foundation, and we win. Our lawyers out-lawyer the government every single time. They're outspent typically when they go to court 10 to 1, 20 to 1 with taxpayer money. On one of the cases I'm talking about and going to talk about, John Duarte. When we get to it, we don't need to get to it now. Hold on. Yeah, I was going to ask you to do that. Be all fancy. Yeah, all right. So that's us. Founded in 74. I'm going to move out of the way so you can see it. Can you all hear me? Yep. All right. Limited government, property rights, individual rights, and a balanced approach to environmental protection. How many of us think any of these things are happening now? All right. Believe it or not, we won cases in all of them. Imagine how much worse it would be if we weren't there. Focus on individuals. We challenge government entities that seek to limit, curtail, or abolish institutional and constitutional rights, individual and constitutional rights. We don't do a whole lot of work in the Second Amendment area because there are other people who focus on that. We don't do a whole lot of religious freedom because there are other people who focus on that. We focus primarily on free speech, right to work, and property. Why? Because if you don't have property rights, you have no other rights. That's why we focus on it so much. All right, so next. We have 125 active cases, 24 lawyers who do the work that a paid legal firm would probably require 65, 70 lawyers to do. We're very efficient at what we do. We have an office in the mouth of the devil, Washington. Florida, Hawaii, we do a little bit of work in. Washington, D.C., mouth of the devil. And our California headquarters is right here in Sacramento. And we're 501c3 like I think you guys are. Isn't AMRA 501c3? Yeah. We don't do any politicking because we beat them on their own ground. We go into their ring with their referee and beat them. We do it in the courts. We don't do it anywhere else. We do a lot of PR, and I'll talk about that, especially with Reinhardt. How you doing? Case, just to give you an idea of how we approach it. We also represent a lot of clients through something called amici or amicus curiae, where we're a friend of the court. And what that means is our lawyers do, they put together a brief that would win the case if they weren't just a friend of the case. And in many cases, we've been told that our volunteer brief is what really swayed the judge to say, government's crazy, go back and do it the right way. So we do a lot of those, and we also do what we call direct rep, which is what we're fixing to do for Mr. Reinhardt. We'll talk about People versus Reinhardt. Now I know, where is it now? You're still appealing to California again, right? All right. Okay, so if that doesn't happen, and I hear the chances aren't, that's an uphill battle. It happens never at the Supreme Court, but they actually reheard one of us, and the reason for that is because of our rep. You know, if you get a reputation for doing good law, even if they don't like the questions you're asking, if you ask a beautiful question, they'll want to read it, and that's what we do. So I sat in the case messaging meeting for People versus Reinhardt, and we don't just lawyer. What we do is we look at what are we going to do blogging? How are we going to get articles out for people to push out on, as press releases? What's that message going to be? How can we broaden the appeal? Dredge mining now, will it be fishing, hiking next? How is this part of the history of California suddenly being flushed down the toilet? That kind of thinking goes into messaging for the case, much less fighting the case. And then we set up radio interviews. We find allied organizations. We focus on our donors who have an interest in this area. Awful lot of people who worked in mining and forestry that are our donors. Major owners of companies, even though we typically don't get any donations from the government. We do get them from some rich folks because they believe in the Constitution too. All right? And then we're looking for film, who, why, and how, which I think you already have, and we're going to assemble some credible independent experts. When I sent Craig an email, I asked him if you guys had any experts lined up. I said, not like climate science experts, but real experts. So he sent me some expert stuff. So now that's what we're doing. That's just a tiny part of what we're doing in People versus Reinhardt. That doesn't even talk about the law. That talks about our strategy to get the message out and engage other folks who should be as upset as we are about what's going on. Okay? Just to give you an idea. Is that going to work, Craig? Does that help? Okay. All right, so WOTUS, Waters of the United States. We, along with a whole bunch of other people, are suing the federal government. A bunch of states are suing the federal government as well. So in this case, we actually have some of the individual states as our allies in this, because the government has decided somehow that every drop of rain that falls from the sky, every puddle on the ground, every drop of water that bubbles up from the ground, except for groundwater, believe it or not, they haven't tried to take that yet, only in California are they trying to do that. Imagine that. So there's this law that defined waters of the United States. And all these government entities, in their infinite wisdom, decide they're going to clarify that law. How many of you have ever been run over by a clarification? Because that's what this is. The clarification took the rule, the law that Congress passed, and widened it to an obscene extent. So we, along with a whole bunch of other people, are filing suit to have that law put back in the little box where it belongs, or maybe even thrown out, because one Supreme Court justice said the law is so vague it is probably unconstitutional, because the law has to be pretty specific. It can't just be whatever some unelected radical bureaucrat who is never held accountable decides on a given day, which is what we are right now, right? Okay, so that's one of the cases. The other case is Benny versus Munn. This is a wonderful case. How many of you think that you have the right to say that President Obama is a communist? How many of you think you got that right? Well, if you're Mr. Benny and you're a financial planner in the state of North Dakota, you don't have that right if you want to keep your business. A man named Munn, who was a regulator, told him to shut up, basically, or else he would be investigated. And that's a heavily regulated industry. If you know a stockbroker, very heavily regulated. Got to the point where basically he was fired. They say he was fired because he was out of compliance. There's so many rules in the stock market business that everybody is always out of compliance for one of them. And so he was fired for basically for that. We're going to represent him. We're going to try to get his case into the Supreme Court of the United States. Because I think just the other day I said that Obama's a communist, and you know, I'm kind of worried they're going to arrest me and threaten me. That's the kind of stuff we do. Oh, I'm going to read this out. Can all of you read that? So the lower court, the reason why we're taking this to the Supreme Court is because the lower court said this. Circuit Court found that even though regulators targeted Benny, partly in retaliation for his constitutionally protected political speech, they did not do enough to deter someone of ordinary firmness from continuing to speak. So Benny's claim failed because we cannot say that finding was clearly wrong, we affirm. In other words, he clearly had constitutionally protected speech. They clearly threatened him because of it. But a person of ordinary firmness would risk losing his job and his livelihood rather than shut up. Therefore, we're going to throw his case out. So, anybody's read the Constitution lately, and if any of you want a copy of it, I'll send you one. I don't remember it saying in there anywhere, you look in there, does it say that you have the right to free speech? Depending on how much you're threatened about it, you got to be firm and hold up yourself, even under the threat of your job? No, it doesn't say that. So we're representing Mr. Benny. And then the last one I'm going to talk about, and I apologize for talking this long, but this stuff just totally pisses me off. I got to tell you, which is why I'm working there. A fellow named John Duarte, farmer, had hired a man to plow a field in Northern California. One of these unelected, radical bureaucrats who's not held accountable decided that he was destroying wetlands, and they cited him for destroying wetlands under the Clean Water Act, despite the fact that the Clean Water Act specifically exempts plowing. It says right in there, normal farming operations, including plowing, are exempt from the Clean Water Act. So, they cited him, told him to cease and desist. If not, he's going to face fines of $35,000 to $70,000 a day. Then they had a little hearing that he wasn't invited to, which is a violation of his rights to due process. He countersued. Now they're going after him personally for millions of dollars, right? What do we call that? Retaliation? Retaliating. Because we live in a land where the government basically threatens you, and you give them a little bit of money so they don't take your house. And this is a huge example of that. Give him a little bit of money, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, so they don't take his business, successful business. So that's another case that we're representing. So if you'd like to donate, that's fine. I'm not going to ask you for money. I wouldn't turn it down if you gave it to me. What I would like you to...
Take gold?
Yeah. Personally, oh yeah. The PLF will never see any of it, but I'll take it personally.
How does that work with the Reinhardt case, since that is a criminal case?
Well, because it's
Because at this point in time, it's not just a criminal case.
Yeah.
thank you very much. Originally, Brendan was committed a crime. None of us think it's a crime, but you know, according to the lackeys. But now it's, I hate to use the word beyond a crime. Now, basically, where the case is being played out is the federal government specifically says you have a right to do something. The state of California says, no, you don't. The state of California is getting around that because Fed has precedent over state. State of California is getting around it by saying, well, no, you can still you know, you can still take a spoon and a straw and go out and what?
Those are tools. Careful. I think
Yeah.
it's only hands now.
Well, you can't take a big straw or a big spoon out, but you can pan for gold. You can pan. You can dig, you know, through the dirt and look for, oh, there's some gold. You can do that. So they're saying that they're not stopping you from doing it. But the way the law works, as I understand it, which is why we should win if they hear the case, is that if they make it economically impossible for you to do something that you paid good money to do, they're banning it, which flies in the face of what the federal government says that you can do. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So you guys probably understand it more than I do. But it started out, all these cases will start out as a criminal case, but we won't take them as a criminal case. When they get to the area of constitutional law, state or federal constitution, then we'll take it, because then if we set a precedent, it forces them, if they obey their own laws, to obey them everywhere, not just that in particular case. So I want to thank you folks. I know I went a little long. I apologize. Just passionate about the stuff. So didn't mean to bore you. I'll be around for a while, at least through lunch. So if you have any further questions, thank you so much for allowing me to chat. Appreciate it.